Hello, it's Maria Rivera Heath here, and it's Tuesday noon and it's time for another Facebook Live. And today I have for you another video, and I'm going to talk with you about how to work with your ego, your fear, and your shame. Because those three, it's almost like a triplet. You know, sometimes I call anxiety and depression the evil twin sisters, but this ego, fear, and shame, so it's like the triplets, you know, they all come together. They all feed on each other. Fear, feeds on shame. Shame feeds on ego, and ego feeds on fear. So how to work with that, and how all of these things, I don't even know, it's really emotions, because they're not really traits. It's kind of like emotions, barriers that get in the way of you experiencing what's on the other side of ego, and what's on the other side of shame, and what's on the other side of fear. So one of the ways that you can tell if your ego is getting in the way, or fear or shame, how did you tell when some of these? Well, first of all, let me explain that ego is that part. We all have an ego. We all experience fear. We all experience shame in one part or another of our lives. But the ego tends to come up, and most of the time, from what I hear and from what I've experienced, is that the ego tends to protect you from experiencing fear or experiencing shame. That's what the ego tends to do. Fear does the same thing. Fear, prevents you, from experiencing whatever it is. Let's just say you want to climb a mountain. Well, ego is going to tell you whether you can or cannot climb a mountain. Am I really prepared, or you're not prepared? Fear is the same thing. It all looks about the same. Interestingly enough, anxiety and your body is going to experience all of that similarly. Your autonomic system is going to come into play. Specifically your sympathetic nervous system, your fight or flight response is going to come into play during that time. What happens? Happens is you get triggered, and it all feels like whatever trauma you experienced, if you experience the trauma. So what experiences you probably will experience, and you'll know if ego is present, or fear is present, or shame. There's no way to get around it. You're gonna experience it. We all experience it. It's part of humankind. Being misunderstood, having the fear of being misunderstood. So how do you combat that? You combat that, the antidote is by being comfortable with being misunderstood, especially if you speak more than one language. I myself, I am bilingual, and I have learned other languages as well. So I have a lot of words that are from many different languages, and though the brain goes through a process that you are misunderstood. And I am misunderstood a lot of the time, because Spanish being my first language, I have a Spanish background, so there's no way to get around it. I'm misunderstood all the time. The cultures are different. So if I were to allow fear, ego, and shame to hold me back, I will never speak. I wouldn't be here doing this Facebook Live, right? Helping others live the best life that they can possibly live, myself included. So the fear of being misunderstood, not allowing ego, fear, shame to get in the way of speaking your truth. Another way is reacting instead of listening. For example, if you're having a conversation and the person triggers you or whatever, and you guys are talking at the same time, reacting to someone instead of listening. So the ego comes in, either you feel like you know more, or the other person, you're afraid that the other person's not listening, what have you, whatever is experiencing there, Another thing too, that the ego, when it's present, or fear or shame, when it's present, it mimics anxiety, like I said before, and it will bring your breathing down. It'll constrict your breathing. So you won't be able to expand your lungs and take that deep, deep, deep breath that you want to take, that will release some stress and bring you into parasympathetic mode, in the rest and digest mode. Okay, So as I'm talking with you, feel free to grab your journal and jot some notes down for your journal entries if you're not in the course. So another way that ego, fear, and shame can come up in your daily life is by not having boundaries. So you may either hold your boundaries because you feel comfortable holding your boundaries, or you may not hold up your boundaries because you either have fear of the other person, what they might say or think, or your family, or your ego is, your ego is not healthy enough to hold the boundaries, or someone may shame you for holding up the boundary, because that's not what happens in the family. Sometimes in some families, we don't hold boundaries. We just walk all over each other, right? So in some families that happens, and if you want to hold your boundary and you want to set certain standards, you're going to, there's going to be waves, okay? So that's another way. And then another thing that ego, fear, and shame may keep you from experiencing is alone time. And this is the time that especially like women in my age, right? Like I'm in my 50s, and my daughters are they're away, they've moved out, they're living their beautiful lives, and it's my husband and I, right? So this time for some couples can be very challenging because they didn't put the work in early in the relationship, so they're not friends, let's say. So having the fear, they'll prefer to stay in a relationship that is dysfunctional out of fear of being alone and experiencing the life that may be better, may not be better. We don't know because it hasn't been experienced. But having the fear, ego, fear, and shame can prevent you at any age from experiencing alone time and getting to know who you really are and you expressing yourself to your fullest potential. So what's the goal here? How do you work with ego, fear, and shame so they don't come up on a constant basis and you can, put them at bay so that you can live the best life that you have? Is to be a witness. The goal is to witness, notice yourself when ego comes in. Do I really want to go hike that mountain or I don't? Am I not hiking the mountain because I'm afraid? Or am I not hiking the mountain because I don't have enough experience, or I don't have enough information and I need to acquire this experience and information before I tackle that challenge? That's, I can see that, right? That's makes sense to acquire, the more knowledge, more information than to just go hit the mountain without knowing and really like hurting yourself or whatever, getting lost or whatever. So as long as your decision is not based out of fear, right, and you're being a witness to yourself, and it's a very smart decision, then fear comes up, and then you talk fear down, right? That's a good way to work with fear. Another way is to just notice that, okay, I know how to climb the mountain. I have all of the experiences. I'm afraid, but I'm going to do it anyway. And if it gets too challenging for me, I'll just come back, right? Fear is present. You worked with it. You acknowledged it, and you continued on, okay? Climbing the mountain. And then if anything happens, you can either summit or not. And that's not the goal. The goal is to be a witness to yourself and to be an encouragement to yourself, So that's what I have for you. Oh, and another thing is, as you're being a witness to yourself and noticing to yourself, be compassionate about it. Don't add more shame. Don't add more judgment. Just be very compassionate. Learn to accept who you are. You're beautiful as is. And yes, just to answer a few questions that I've had, the course is closed, but I've also left a link to a masterclass there, an audio masterclass that you're more welcome to have. Okay? So this is what I have for you for today, and I'll see you next Tuesday at noon. Thank you for listening, and thank you for watching. And once again, I am Maria Rivera Heath, and I'm a therapist here in Connecticut. Thank you. Have a good day.